President. Members will please remain standing while the Chief Executive enters the chamber. The Chief Executive. The Chief Executive will first address the Council. Madam President, summer is here, and the southerly wind has brought a pleasant spell of fine days with blue sky and white clouds. So we are in a good mood. When we look back on the hazy, discouraging days, it reinforces our determination to drive the pollutants away and win back our blue skies. The government has done a lot in recent years to improve air quality and to bring our blue sky back. Compared with 1997, major pollutants in the air have been reduced. In 2004, the concentration on respirable suspended particulates, RSP, and nitrogen oxides, NOx, recorded at roadside air quality monitoring stations fell by 9% and 24% respectively. Except for sulfur dioxide, emissions of major pollutants dropped between 16 to 28%. This is still far from being enough. Roadside air quality monitoring stations are recording high air pollution indexes from time to time, and we continue to have days of low visibility in the urban areas. People are still disappointed with our air quality. We must look the problem in the eyes, and it's not just me, it's the entire community that have to look the problem in the eyes. Measures to improve air quality did not yield results in the short term, however, so that we set our target well ahead and strive to achieve it step by step. 4 years ago, we set targets with the Guangdong provincial government that would see by 2010 a significant reduction in emissions of 4 major air pollutants in the region. To achieve this target, Guangdong and Hong Kong have put in place a series of measures. Guangdong is adopting measures to expand the use of cleaner fuels, restrict the level of sovereign fuels, phase out small-scale and highly polluting power plants, install the sulfurization systems to generation units, and strictly control vehicle emissions. In Hong Kong, power plants are still the major source of pollution in terms of emissions, with the amount of sulfur dioxide released accounting for 92% of the total. The government has imposed emission caps in the licenses of the power plants. In the long run, the government will require power companies to reduce emissions drastically and impose penalties for failing to meet the emission caps through the scheme of control agreements after 2008. To meet the 2010 emission reduction targets, the government has also implemented other measures, including tightening the specifications for petrol to the Euro 4 standard, introducing Euro 4 emission standards to newly registered vehicles, requiring the installation of vapor recovery systems at petrol stations, and that will help to reduce the waste on petrol and also to reduce the vapor. And also to controlling volatile organic compounds emissions from specific products, and introducing a mandatory energy efficiency labeling scheme covering rooms, coolers, refrigerators, and so on. These measures, when implemented, will help us achieve the targets for cutting emissions by 2010. However, If we have the public's participation, we will get double the result with half the effort. Maybe you will ask, how much can one person do in helping to reduce air pollution? Well, as we breathe the same air, we should all chip in to improve air quality. A little help from every citizen will mean a lot in cleaning the air and bring about a substantial improvement to the air quality. Take energy conservation as an example. Power used for air conditioning accounts for 1/3 of our total energy consumption. If we can raise the temperature of all air-conditioned venues by 3 degrees Celsius, that is from 21 or 22 degrees Celsius to 25.5 degrees Celsius as advocated by the government, we can save about 1 billion units of electricity a year. This means the public can save $900 million in electricity tariffs. The move will also help cut 700,000 tons of carbon dioxide, 2,400 tons of sulfur dioxide, 1,200 tons of nitrogen oxides, and 100 tons of respirable suspended particulates annually. Improving air quality requires the whole community's participation. I would like to take this opportunity to announce that the Environmental Protection Department will kick off a series of publicity and public education activities from end July to encourage the public and the business sector to partake in cleaning up the air. The Clear Air Charter initiated by the business sector last year is a good start. The government will show its support by endorsing the charter. At the community level, people can make use of public transport, turn off idling engines, choose electric appliances with high energy efficiency, switch off home appliances when not in use, choose, like when you leave a room, you switch off the TV or the air conditioning, and then choose electrical appliance and avoid using goods with volatile organic compounds such as hairspray and air refreshener. These moves would all help. Of course, as I said, it's important to adjust air conditioning temperature to a more appropriate level. All government bureau departments have raised the air-conditioned room temperature to 25.5 degrees Celsius. At the beginning, our colleagues were not used to it, but actually eventually find it's actually a very comfortable temperature. So I think here it must be around 22.5 degrees Celsius or so. Have you measured it? Is it 23, 24 degrees? So there's still some room. Chief Executive, if that's the case, then all gentlemen here must take off their jacket. Yes, I'm exactly coming to that. So it could be, maybe we could be a bit more casual. So we want to promote energy conservation, and we're going to launch a Dress Down in Summer campaign. Policies allowing civil servants to dress casual in summer have been put in place. Later today, the Civil Service Bureau will issue a reminder to all civil servants to remind them and to encourage them to dress in casual but appropriate attire in summer. They will no longer need to wear jackets and ties to work. Well, I've also thought about it, but out of deference to the Legislative Council, I'm still wearing a suit and a bow tie. However, when this session comes to an end, my bow tie and coat will be coming off. I hope the private sector will also encourage their staff to dress casually in summer wherever appropriate, in a gesture to support our green initiative. Of course, maybe like lawyers, they have to wear proper attire in court. That's entirely understandable. But perhaps on some occasions, we could dress a bit more casually. The government wants to strive for clean air, so we will consider all practical measures to improve air quality. We believe that will help to eliminate pollution, protect public health, and also boost investors' confidence in Hong Kong in the long run. Of course, aggressive emission reduction measures will inevitably cause short-term inconvenience to the public and increase cost for certain sectors. Therefore, it is necessary to have sufficient discussions in the community and reach a social consensus before implementing any aggressive measures. At this stage, we should take every small step to support the clean air initiative in our daily lives. Like those small measures I mentioned, added together, they would yield some results. So we should start at the level of our daily lives. Hong Kong is a small place, members. Air pollution affects everyone regardless of age, wealth, status, and profession. So citizens should shoulder the responsibility together. I hope all Hong Kong people, the local business community, and Hong Kong businessmen investing in the Pearl River Delta region can fully support the activities to be launched by the Environmental Protection Department for a blue sky. Thank you, Madam President. The Chief Executive will now answer questions raised by members. A member whose question has been answered may, if necessary and for the purpose of elucidation only, ask a short follow-up question. Mr. Bernard Chen. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, Mr. Chairman, I welcome your suggestions. I no longer need to wear this jacket. Well, the World Cup had its final match this morning. I wonder if you had a chance to watch it or last night or this morning. I'm not sure if Italy is your is the team you have tipped to win the World Cup. In any case, in your letter to Hong Kong recently, you referred to the theory of football being round, and good leader should be able to foster a spirit of togetherness among the people. Do you think Hong Kong is united enough? Recent days, a lot of people, some people have expressed views about our political system. So how do you respond to that, and what do you propose we can do as an extra step so that we could further foster harmony? Well, because I have to prepare for this session this morning, so I had to force myself to time record the match. But then at one, the TV was on. My wife went up to watch it, so I also ended up watching the match. So please don't mind if I have a gaffe or anything today. But in any case, Hong Kong is a pluralistic society. There are different views. It's only natural, and it's only how a normal society operates. But will it give the impression that there's no solidarity? Well, in an open society, this is bound to happen. But what is important is that we're all working for the long-term interest of Hong Kong, and we're all working for the prosperity and stability of Hong Kong. It's fine if we express different views. What's important is that there is tolerance, and we are all going to chip in our constructive views, and then we'll listen to all views, and then we can strive for consensus. Even on a very difficult issue like a constitutional arrangement, we could come to some consensus. That is my personal view. Well, but Hong Kong is a pluralistic society. We cannot expect everybody to see eye to eye on the same issue. But if you look at it a different way, when something should happen, you'll find that everybody becomes united. Like whenever there's disasters on the mainland, when we had the SARS outbreak, you could see the cohesiveness among the community. So that's our value. But of course, there are certain deep-rooted problems that haven't been addressed, and we have to work on those. And in the process, definitely there are bound to be different views. So we have to be tolerant. You have to respect others' views. And if that's the attitude we adopt, well, maybe people don't think we are in solidarity, but at least people will think we are a progressive society with a tolerance culture. Mr. Albert Ho? Well, we talk about football game. That's something I have to talk about. But at the same time, we must not forget there are people living in new towns in Dai Strait. Chief Executive, you might have noticed that in the past 2-3 years in Tin Shui Wai, the new town, there have been a spate of family tragedies. 2 years ago, family violence case led to the death of 4 in the family, and then recently a few women joined a suicide pact and they killed themselves. No wonder. One of our Permanent Secretaries said the Tin Shui was the city of sadness. Now, for new towns like Tin Shui Wai, in the course of planning, did the revenue officials first learn the lessons of new towns like Chunmun in the 70s, 80s. Lesson was that these places were remote and so transportation costs are high and there are not enough jobs in the local community, and very often we have CSSA recipients, unemployed families or new arrivals all put in the same new town. And then for 300,000 population new town, there is a serious shortage of facilities. There is not a single LCSD facility, no playground, no library, no clinic, no hospital, no nothing. So if you don't even give them the facilities in this new town, do you think you are looking after them properly?
In relation to the planning and design of new towns, well, in the past, there was lack of coordination and it was just limited to Chunmun. But in fact, Chunmun was rather good. When we first planned for Sha Tin, we also found that there was some imbalance in the industrial areas. We hoped that residents would go there to work and then they didn't have to go to the urban area to look for jobs and put pressure on the transport network. But in fact, there was an imbalance because they did go out to work and people did have to go into work in the Sha Tin factories. Now, in relation to Tsim Sha Tsui, when it comes to our design concepts and our implementation, we really have to give it consideration. When it comes to overall planning, I think we are quite good. Facilities needed, the size of the population, etc. However, as far as new towns are concerned, in particular in this case of Tin Shui Wai, as you have said, yes, the average income of the residents is lower, and we have ethnic minorities. Many of them have moved to new towns to live. And so we are faced with new social problems that we haven't seen in the past. Moreover, for social facilities, usually we would wait for the population to grow to a certain size before we put in the facility so as to avoid wastage at the beginning period. I think we need to make some adjustments here. For remote new towns, I don't think they can be asked to use nearby facilities in the district next door. I think we should provide the facilities earlier. We can see this in Tin Shui Wai, but then in fact there are some facilities in Tin Shui Wai. We have district libraries, mobile libraries, a public swimming pool, a stadium, and some other park facilities in Tin Shui Wai. But it is true that we don't have such in Tin Shui Wai North, and gradually we are now inputting more resources there. I understand that there's a plan for a stadium, a 7-a-side soccer pitch, a basketball court, as well as a number of recreational facilities, and there will be a public library, there will be a leisure center. Moreover, the SWD will also pay particular attention to the needs of Tin Shui Wai. Some integrated services have been commissioned there. In fact, they've been commissioned a while ago, and they will be stepped up now. And then for the Labor Department, we are going to step up our particular efforts there. I agree with you. Yes, I think on this occasion, I think we must have learned from it, and we will look at the problem. And so we'll try to see whether we should also pay equal attention to, say, for example, Tung Chung. We need to make sure that the support services and facilities must be there. I agree with you. We need to join hands to see what remedial measures should be introduced. Mr. Ho, thank you, CE. You have said that you will be positive in your response and you will give particular attention to such remote and poor districts. In fact, this is a new issue. I think the issue has been raised for at least 2 to 3 years' time. Last year, the DP had a special report with a special chapter on Tin Shui Wai. Now, the problem is who's going to coordinate the efforts so that such will be implemented as soon as possible. In addition to hardware, we should also have other facilities like community building activities and community building measures so as to enhance the sense of belonging and unite them. So we don't just need hardware, there's a lot more to be done as well. So CE, are you going to instruct, or rather are you going to entrust the job with a particular policy secretary so that he or she will coordinate the matters so that we don't see any more imbalances in the new towns so that they will become cities of no hope? I don't think Tin Shui Wai has no hope at all. I went there before, and it was my first visit, and I went there in the morning and the evening, and then in fact I also paid personal visits to certain facilities. I'm equally concerned as you. Now, it takes more than 2 years' time. In fact, it is a matter of whether we planned for them 5 or 6 years ago. Now, for the projects that go to the FC, you can see that it takes a long leading time to plan for such. We have to act quickly now so as to make improvements. Yes, for software, we should do more. We can do more. Yes, there is coordination, and in particular, the HAD is the coordinator. On the one hand, we are here working at the level of the district councils. We are devolving powers to the district councils, and within the government, we are also trying to devolve the power to the district level. We hope that we can see a new picture here. You can see that the PS for Home Affairs as well as the SHA, they are particularly concerned about the coordination. If there is a need, I'm sure the CS4A as well as the FS will also help. If you need my help, I will also chip in. We will work on the hardware. We will also work on the software. So in relation to new towns like Tin Shui Wai and Tung Chung, I hope that you will gradually see the completion and concrete improvement as far as the facilities are concerned. Mr. Lee Kwok-hung. Good afternoon, Mr. Chung. Not too long ago, a bill has been enacted so that traditional Chinese medicine practitioners can issue medical certificates. I was the chair of the subcommittee, and I found that it was a piece of good news. But then a controversial issue cropped up. That is, why is it that listed CMPs can attend to patients, but then they are not allowed to issue medical or sick leave certificates. So there is a big confrontation here. So what measures can you propose so as to ease the tension within the sector of TCM? And also, what can you do to make sure that Chinese medical practitioners can play a greater role in the society of Hong Kong? Well, in relation to traditional Chinese medicine, as well as the qualifications of Chinese medical practitioners, we have been putting in a lot of efforts. We have 5,000 registered CMPs, including 500 who used to be listed and now they have become registered, and they are now qualified to issue sick leave certificates. Well, to me, for CMPs, I think it's a matter of whether they are good medical practitioners. I don't think their value and their reputation should not just hinge on whether they're qualified to issue sick leave certificates or medical certificates. Well, within the sector, yes, there are different voices, there are different views. Well, in order to uphold professional qualifications, which were obtained after sitting and passing an examination, that should be the basis of getting the status of a registered CMP, and so that qualifies you to issue certificates. 500 listed CMPs have become registered, and therefore they can issue sick leave certificates. We, on the part of the administration, would also try to see to this matter. There are 3,000 listed CMPs. We hope that they can pass the exams and be up to the mark of the requirements. I think this is a more positive response. Mr. Lee Kwok-hung. Mr. Chung, yes, we understand that we need to safeguard the interests of the citizens, but currently there are masters in traditional Chinese medicine who have got their former students passing the exams, but then as a result of the examination systems, such masters are not able to pass the exams. So I hope that you can find measures to avoid them being marginalized.
Well, for listed CMPs, they could continue to practice medicine, they could continue to do anything they could do before. There's nothing that they could do before that they can't do now. And we want to maintain the standard of the CMP profession, so we have to respect that decision. This is just a transitional arrangement, and this is bound to happen during the transition. Of course, there are some aged CMPs or very experienced CMPs. Well, I'm sure just because they can't issue medical certificates, then there will be no one going to see them. I don't think so. If they are very good CMPs, I'm sure they have plenty of business. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Madam President, I'm glad to hear from the Chief Executive about measures to be taken on air quality. I'm also glad that the Chief Executive is very concerned about air pollution problem in Hong Kong. I'm also glad to hear that he attaches great importance to the Clear Air Charter proposed by the Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce. Now, this is the first day that you come to this council that we have a fine day with blue sky. I hope there'll be more such fine days next time when you come. Now, you also talk about this 11th five-year plan. Talk about the supplementary efforts of development in the central western part of China, and also a delegation went to the western part of China to explore business opportunities, and then in September you're also going to call a economic summit. Now, Mr. Chief Executive, we all know business opportunities come and go quickly, and also China is a vast country with a lot of resources. So what would the government do to help the business sector identify business opportunities on the mainland and to open up the mainland market? Now, of course, the SAR government will play a facilitating role. We're going to provide a better business environment, like promoting CEPA. We have senior government officials leading delegations to the mainland to knock us. When I was the Chief Secretary, and even now I am also involved in this task, because we would like Hong Kong businessmen to be able to start up their businesses on mainland. At the same time, they're able to go to different cities and provinces to meet with the senior leaders and explore business opportunities and investment opportunities. So this is an ongoing task on our part. Now, in the 11th five-year plan, Hong Kong was mentioned that we could be several centers. Now we're going to have an economic summit. Hopefully by the end of the year, we are able to come up with a comprehensive strategy with different program areas, and that will help to enhance our competitiveness. And we have the 9+2 framework and the Peripheral Delta development. And then there are also provinces surrounding the Peripheral Delta. They are all new markets and new emerging platforms. Even in the Guangdong province, we have a lot of business there, but we could perhaps also move into other new markets. As you know, not long ago, I went to the west part of went to Guangxi and Yunnan. I would also like to go to Guizhou and other provinces soon. These are the provinces near Guangdong province. Hopefully, we're able to open up these markets and create business opportunities. At the same time, for the more established businesses on the mainland, hopefully they will be attracted to Hong Kong to set up branch offices or to raise finances, and then they will use Hong Kong as a platform for them to converge with the trade and financial systems around the world. So this will help to strengthen Hong Kong's position as a financial center and trading center. So in terms of tourism, trade, in particular investment, and also our manufacturing industries have an extensive service network, and also about using Hong Kong as the platform for mainland businesses to go out. Also, we are working on all these fronts. And apart from Guangzhou and Beijing, we have ETOs, as we've just announced. We're going to set up offices in Chengdu and Shanghai. Hopefully, we'll be able to service Hong Kong businessmen operating in these places, and this will help to strengthen our competitiveness. So this is, again, another ongoing task. But of course, the government is not business-minded as such. It's not our strength. Doing business is the strength of the business sector, so we could only be a facilitator and carry out the tasks that I have mentioned. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Madam President, if I could ask the Chief Executive, apart from offices in Chengdu and Shanghai in the coming year, will you also set up 2 or 3 more offices as soon as possible to support the Hong Kong businessmen? Well, operating such an office is expensive. We have to rent places, we need staff, and we need to have directorate staff to head the office. So we're very careful when we try to add to our establishment. That's why you have to do it step by step. We started from 1, and then we had 2, and then from 2 we had 4. So you can see we are doing that as long as we could afford it. Mr. Albert Chen? The chief executive said he's happy to see the fine days of blue sky. Well, because the chief executive is in high office and he's bound to win a second term, so that's why he's in a cheerful mood. But you know, new towns, we see a lot of sad stories. I've been saying it for 5-6 years, but many senior officials just turn a deaf ear to me. The reasons suicide pact raised an alarm bell to the community as a whole. 3 middle-aged women felt there was nothing left to live for. And suicide is actually the strongest form of accusation of the government. And because they are absolutely desperate, and that must be really sarcastic, you know, that the government is promoting strong governance. Now, in the middle of the night, what will you feel? And would you seek advice from the Lord about what you can do to address these family problems? Well, but all these are due to lack of planning. There are a lot of facilities outstanding. There's delay of complex building in Area 109A for 4 years, and there is also shortage of other facilities and delay of such facilities. And so there is no support offered to these low-income families, and also they don't they're not able to enjoy normal community life. Now, 3 women have killed themselves. Do you have any new measures? Let's not rehearse what's been said before. Are there any new measures so that for new towns like Tongchong or Tinshui, families living in there would be saved from further tragedies? Whenever there is a suicide case, of course, we must all do some soul searching. Is it because we've done anything, we have missed out anything? But we shouldn't paint it as so depressing or bleak. Because in terms of our suicide rate compared to other advanced countries, our rate is still low. I'm not saying we should be complacent. Sometimes it may not be just about facilities. There could be more complex reasons. In Northern Europe, as you know, the suicide rate is very high. Well, they have much better community facilities, and also they have much higher education level. So we have to consider if there are any ways we could reduce the number of suicide cases. Of course, we won't be able to eliminate suicide altogether. As I explained, in Tinshui, there is a shortage of facilities, so we'll continue to work on that. In 2 months, we're going to start a family support program in Tinshui. As for investment in hardware, we'll continue with that. The Health, Welfare and Food Bureau has an interdisciplinary task force on mental health and community-based support. So these we have been prompted to do that after the series of tragedies. From now till 2008 in North Tinshui, there's going to be a new integrated youth service center, elderly service center, and also there are 2 new NGOs are planning to start 2 new integrated service centers on a self-financed basis in Tinshui North. So you can see all the services are coming on stream. Well, I admit that we have not done enough in the past, but when Tinshui was developed, there was a time when our economy was in the doldrums. And also, our planning standards such that the population has to reach a certain size before we could put in place certain facilities. So we do have to review such a planning policy. But I think what's important, Ms. Chen, is that work closely together to see what remedies we can put in place. in terms of social welfare, medical service, welfare service, and so on. All the departments are now really focusing on Tin Shui Wai to see what can be done to remedy the situation. So I hope to see some results in the short term.
Mr. Chen, it seems that there is sudden awakening on the part of the administration. The problem is serious. But what about coordination among departments and also allocation of resources? There have always been big problems. We've been asking for the medical center in Area 109. It's been planned by Reference Bureau, but is money coming? So, Mr. Zhang, are you going to look into the Wai and Tongchong and make sure that there will be coordination so that in terms of the facilities and in terms of the transport fares for residents in such areas which have made them seem excluded, you will see that something be done to solve such problems? I'm sure the CS4A, Mr. Raphael Hui, would be very willing and happy to take on such a challenge. Well, it takes more than just a secretary or the CE to solve the problem. Every morning, the senior officials will discuss the matter. And Tin Shui Wai was discussed many times. Anything that involves cross-bureau coordination gets solved very soon, very easily. But you cannot expect an instant solution. We have to go through certain procedures. I'll try to cut the cumbersome procedures. We need to follow the procedures. But I can tell you that for Tin Shui Wai and Tung Chung Wai will keep a very close view on it. So there won't be a problem of coordination. But of course, in relation to individual projects, where they are worth the while and whether we get the approval from honorable members at the FC, is also something we need to consider. Mr. Ernest Leong, Madam President, Mr. Chief Executive, Mr. Zhang, I think you know that we are now scrutinizing a bill called Smoking Public Health Amendment Bill. In this bill, part of the provisions are such that certain words would be misleading. Say, for example, extra mile, low tar content. The administration's policy direction is such that it is going to be criminalized. In the final stage of our scrutiny, the administration is now proposing an amendment that is, before the enactment of the bill, that is before the 1st of January next year, I believe this is still the target date, and if a trademark has already been registered and if such words have been used on the secret packets, then there will be the grandfathering arrangement. For the Deputy Director of the IPD, from him, we were told that about 10 days ago, registered brand names which were in the eyes of the administration misleading numbered 71. Probably in the run-up to 1st of January, there will be many more because there will be registration expected in the next few months. If such words will still be allowed in the trademarks, in the brand names, then I'm afraid this goes against the government's policies. So the policy will not be meaningful. Time and again, we have asked the Department of Justice, please ask your question, because you're trying to tell us what happened at the Bills Committee meeting. I'm afraid the Chief Executive may know the background of the case. Well, the DOJ colleagues have told us that the arguments for and against are very strong. So my question is, you talk about strong governance. Now, the policy directive, the policy intention is very clear. Have you ever heard of my proposal? That is, at the time that the bill is to be enacted, you give a 6-month grace period to the owners of such registered trademarks to check if they are interested in taking the administration to the court, and then wait for the court ruling before we see it will apply to them. Probably this is more in line with your policy direction. So see, are you aware of my proposal, and are you going to ask the Policy Bureau to give this proposal serious consideration? Thank you. Well, I think you are interested in using the word instructing, directing the policy bureaus. Now, of course, I'm not as familiar as Mr. Leung in relation to the specific clauses in the bills. I think a number of lawyers are concerned about this. Mr. Martini brought up the issue with me a number of times. I have to tell you that we need to face one fact. There are provisions in the basic law which are very clear. We have to protect private property rights. And the lawyers have also said that there are possibilities that will be taken to the court over this matter. I have full respect for this. And the Policy Bureau time and again considered the matter, and it was believed that the current proposal, namely grandfathering arrangement, would be the best approach. And in fact, this is not something new, not something created in Hong Kong. Now, for the secret brand names, I don't think they will be there for a long time. My father used to have Lucky Strike when I was young. Nowadays, you don't see such brand names anymore. And then I went to the mainland. I thought Marlboro and Winston, which used to be very popular in Hong Kong, would be there. Now, in fact, they have become outdated. They like Chonghua, Yun, and Golden Dragon, and they are names that are unknown to me. So I don't think you need to worry that such brand names will last forever. New names will crop up, and then old ones will fade away. So the DOJ has advised us that probably very likely will be taken to the court, and we don't stand a high chance of winning the case. So we need to take a political judgment. And I'm sure Dr. Chow has already considered this. As to how we implement the details, Dr. Chow will know about that. Of course, I'm not fully familiar with all the details, but I'm sure Dr. Chow will follow up on this matter. I think what is important is that on the one hand, we protect the interests of the citizens. On the other hand, we have to respect the provisions in the law, especially in the Constitution. And I don't think we should test the law ourselves. I don't think we should wait for a court case to be brought up. I don't think this is the most responsible way of doing things. Mr. Alan Leong, Mr. Xi Yi, Zhonghua and Yun, I think prior to 1st of January, they will come here and get registered as Extra Mile Zhonghua, Extra Mile Yun Yan. But I'm glad to hear that you're going to consider our views. I think come the 1st of January, many such secret brand names will appear. I'm not asking you not to respect the basic law. We have to respect the basic law. What I propose is that we leave it in the hands of the court. Thank you. I respect what you have said, but then can an administration evade the responsibility? Must we leave everything to the courts? Well, in fact, I understand that many members are concerned about this. And in fact, Dr. Chow is also concerned about this. And internally, we did take up the matter with the DOJ many times. I believe that our final proposal is legally correct, and it will also have the popular support. Thank you. Dr. Raymond Ho. Thank you, Madam President. I'm dressed in a suit because I have to attend a conference on intelligence traffic seminars. Mr. Xi Yi, we have to consider the need to safeguard public health and public hygiene. I think last year there was this outsourcing proposal in relation to giving approvals. it would involve structural matters as well as plan making and layout plans. Now, it is said that this will improve the business environment. It would also cut down on the time needed. But in fact, the building ordinance has set out very clearly the statutory time limits in relation to the processing of such work. What about the question of independence? And will there be an impact? Because we understand that within the business sector, there are many networks and relationships. Will somebody within the same group be approving the plans? Will one day that would have an impact on our stability, etc.?
Well, I don't know if are you saying that if we have this new policy, or are you saying that is anyone making this suggestion? Now, last year the administration proposed to outsource these services. Right now, these services are taken up by the relevant departments, departments responsible for vetting or private layout plans, building plans, and so on. Yes, indeed, that is our plan, because there are already authorized persons with the professional expertise, and of course, they are as superior as our own professional staff. So is it possible that we make use of private sector resources to deal with unauthorized building works? We believe that's the right move. Of course, when we do so in the course of enforcement, would that lead to chaos? Are we able to comply with court procedure? And would there be any omissions? Well, these are things we could thresh out. I'm sure you know better than me what's involved in the process. I think what's important is the position and the position of other parties, that you make that clear to us. I'm sure when we change any policies, we'll certainly take on board all the relevant views. Well, this is not just a concern of the professions concerned, because we have a lengthy colonial history, and we have already had in place well-established system for monitoring safety, building safety, and even other countries envy us. For example, Singapore and Japan have tried outsourcing such services to the private sector. So the private sector will vet building applications on behalf of the government, but something went wrong. So I hope you will give this really careful consideration. You mustn't tamper with a time-honored system that's been in place for decades. Well, a good system has to be kept, but it could also be updated. Especially now, the complaint is that there's backlog of cases, the processing time is far too long. So how do you deal with that? Either we increase our manpower, increase our establishment. That means the public will have to pay more for that. Or on the other alternative is to have qualified private practitioners do the work. Of course, overseas experience is important. Whenever we switch to a new system, we have to consider our commitment, the enforcement side, and everything. And of course, we have to consider the cause, whether there is backlog of cases, and what is in the best interest of the public. So these are all considerations we have to take into account. Now, you say Singapore has unsuccessful examples. We must have a look at that, and at the same time, we have to see what succeeded in the Singaporean system. Mr. Martin Lee, well, on the question of some attire, I actually raised this with the last governor, Mr. Christopher Patton, but he wouldn't agree. He wouldn't tell me why he wouldn't take off his jacket in the summer. That's because his waistline was expanding by the day, I found out. Maybe that's the reason why. But, you know, the indoor temperature corresponds with the attire, because we want to show you respect, and that's why we have lowered the temperature. But if we raise the temperature now to 25 degrees, you feel uncomfortable, you want to take off your jacket. So you try to show respect to us, and we try to show respect to you, so no one is taking off our jacket. Actually, just now, Madam President reminded you, if you want the temperature to be at 25.5, then all gentlemen must take off their jackets. So can you lead by example? With the concurrence of the President, take off your jacket and ask your officials to take off jacket. Now this picture before the TV or on the newspaper will speak 1,000 words. And everybody will then follow suit. So we won't have to wear a jacket everywhere we go. Even in a place, on an occasion of decorum, we could take off our jacket. So even when I go to DAB's reception now, I'm going to go like this. So, Mr. Chief Executive, could you lead by example and lead your senior officials to do that now, here and now? I've never heard colleagues tell me that because we want to raise temperature to 25.5 degrees so we don't wear a suit. But rather, right now the temperature is far too low. What we need to do is to raise the temperature to 25.5. And I can guarantee you I will feel as comfortable wearing my suit because, you know, summer suit, the material is light, it's not heavy. But when I look across the chamber, many of you are wearing suits. So I have to show respect to you. I have to wear a suit and because you're wearing a suit. So I have to respect that. But if there is a motion to say that when we come into this chamber in summer, all gentlemen must not wear a suit or jacket, I will definitely follow that requirement. But I think the positive is not to take off our jacket, but rather, because the temperature is really set far too low now, just raise it to 25.5 degrees. Miss Audrey Yu is looking at me. We have to talk about how much energy we can save in the government and in this council, because we spend a lot on electricity tariffs. So raise the temperature to 25.5 and we will come here in suits. But if you have a motion to say that we all do away without suit, I'm sure we'll be happy to follow that. Because I see many members still wearing a suit. This is a place of decorum. So we have the duty to show respect to this council. And I think it's important to be in formal attire. But if you pass a motion to say that we could take off our jacket and our tie, we could follow suit. Perhaps it's time for me to say a few words now. Chief Executive, Mr. Martin Lee, as the president of this council, I certainly do not mind if you don't wear a jacket and a tie. I think the temperature in this chamber is about 24 degrees. If we raise it to 25.5 degrees, I could do it just by giving an order. But if we have a long day here, I'm sure you'll all be sweating. That is a fact. And Chief Executive, the air conditioning system in this council is rather antiquated. And actually we have plans to clean the air conditioning system this summer, not to refurbish it, but to clean the system so it works more efficiently. So, Chief Executive, what you're concerned about is also our concern. And we'll try our very best to do something here. But I think you know, this session is a chance for members to ask questions about people's livelihood, so the public will know we are all thinking about their well-being. And on the question of environmental protection, I could give an assurance to the Chief Executive that the members of this council will always do their level best. Mr. Martin Lee, Chief Executive, as you should know, all around the world, especially in Southeast Asian countries, they're already doing that. The government takes the lead. That's why I went to Mr. Christopher Patton. I asked him I hoped he would take the lead, and so I'm asking you to take the lead. The Democratic Party is doing it. Members of the Democratic Party are doing it, but we, you know, don't have as much influence as you, the Honorable Chief Executive, because once you take the lead, I think this picture will speak 1,000 words. Well, Madam President, you say you don't mind if I take off our jacket or tie. Well, I'll go one extra step then. I think this serves, you know, as a good lead example. Even in a place of decorum, we could do that, and then the message will really go out. It's not about, you know, being casual, but rather even in places of decorum, we'll do that, and then this message will really get to the people. As I said, in the government buildings, we are already doing that. As I explained, very long ago, the government launched the Dress Down in Summer campaign. We've got a circular on that, and the Civil Service Bureau will also remind colleagues again to dress light and to dress down. But as I said, again, this council is a place of decorum. In all parliaments, they are places of decorum, so we go by the rules of procedure. But if this council passes a motion to this effect, I will certainly comply with the motion. But before this motion is passed, I will still go by the current rules of procedure. And if members are wearing a suit, I know exactly what I must do too. But I fully respect your decision to take off your tie.
Mr. Lau Kong-wah. Madam President, I'd like to echo your call that is we should concentrate on livelihood issues. I'm concerned about cross-boundary infrastructural projects. I hope the CEO can tell us about the progress on two items. First of all, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. It has been on the drawing board for a long period of time. But recently, many officials have said that it is something good, but then there are difficulties. The DAB did propose certain ideas in relation to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. So can you comment on the progress? And secondly, for the Shenzhen-Hong Kong Western Corridor, it will be commissioned in a few months' time. It is going to exert a great pressure on the traffic network of Tuen Mun. It hasn't been resolved. We have wondered whether we can make greater use of Route 3 and whether we can have the Western bypass linking Tuen Mun and the Lantau Island. Can there be a decision on it as soon as possible? For the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, we are working on it actively. We're now at the final stage of the study. And then the study report has to be given to the Central People's Government for final decision. Yes, we've been talking about it for a number of years, but then it is no small project. It is going to mean a bridge of 35 kilometers, and it's going to span a number of places, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Zhuhai, and Macau. And it takes the three governments to cooperate to make it come true. And then in terms of our own projects, it may not be a very long time. In fact, for the Timor project, we have been talking about it for a long time, though it is of a smaller scale. Many other smaller scale projects have also been talked about for a longer time. So don't think that we are not working on it actively, but then we need to go through the normal procedures and we have to study it seriously. Currently, we need to think about the connection points, the ports. We have to see whether there will be one single clearance for three places or three separate clearance points for three places, and whether we have got sufficient space at the landing points. And then the second point is about the financing model. Are we going to rely on private sector financing, and what items will be included? And then there are a number of facilities included in the project. And in fact, there was this idea that there should be a rail link as well, in addition to the highway. Such matters have to be given consideration. But I can assure you that we'll try to achieve a consensus ASAP. I'm concerned about it, and Macau and the Guangdong province are also eager about it. But then it requires a lot of input, and it requires the involvement of the waters of three places. As to the Western Corridor, yes, it will be commissioned next year. In relation to the impact on the anti-northwest transport and network situation, we did carry out an assessment report study. In the early days of the commissioning of the corridor, there won't be any significant addition to the traffic flow in Tuen Mun. But then in Tuen Mun, in the town center, probably there will be some pressure. It will be a little bit tight. Instead of having two-way traffic at the town center, we hope that there can be 3 lanes in relation to the flow of traffic. And then towards the end of this year, we are going to see this project coming from the Highways Department. And then if circumstances allow for the Tuen Mun Road, currently we have 3 lanes, and we hope that we can expand the expressway section into 4 lanes, and that would certainly boost the traffic capacity. Upon completion of this project, I believe that the traffic capacity will be boosted in such a way that 85% of the Tuen Mun Road will have 4 lanes traffic. Now, in the short term, we don't think that there will be a problem. In the medium term, the 2 projects that I've outlined would help us to cope with the extra traffic arising from the commissioning of the corridor. In the long term, we have a review of the infrastructure for NT Northwest, and different proposals have been proposed. Say, for example, the bypass. There was also a proposal involving the Route 3. We don't just look at this area, we should also look at the progress of the planning for the development of Lantau. When necessary, we will launch the bigger scale projects. Mr. Lau, I can assure you that in the short term, there won't be a big problem. In the medium term, there will be 2 improvement measures, and I think we can cope with the extra traffic. Mr. Lau Kong-wang, in relation to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, the government once told us that it will get started later this year, but then probably there were problems as outlined by you. The city said that it would be ASAP, but then are we talking about a wait of 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years? Can you give us a rough idea so that we can be prepared for it? I really hope that within my term, I can see a decision being taken. Your term? I have in mind before the middle of the year 2007. I'm working hard on it. I understand that Guangdong province and Macau are also working hard on it, but then we still have to align our ideas, and Dr. Sarah Liu is also working very hard on it. Mrs. Miriam Lang, I don't know whether the CE is aware that the oil prices are still escalating, and then for diesel prices and for the ultra low sulfur, it is now fetching a price of $8.80 per liter, 30% up. In fact, the transport industry is suffering a lot from this high level of oil prices. Probably you must have read in the papers that they had put up a protest. In fact, the fuel prices account for 30 to 50% of the cost of the transport industry. So when the oil prices go up, the cost of operation will be much affected, and they're under great pressure. In November last year, the Legislative Council passed a motion asking for the exemption of the duty on ultra low sulfur diesel for 1 year. But then there wasn't any feedback. So would you agree with me that we should ease the burden on the public, and there should be a very positive response to the call from the industry in relation to the ultra low sulfur diesel? Well, the oil prices are going up. Many industries are involved and are affected, like industrial undertakings, the shipping industry, the aviation industry, the transport industry. So it isn't just a matter of one single person, one single sector being affected. In fact, we all have to bear the brunt. Now, for the transport industry, for the users of diesel, I think you know that we have a special arrangement to take care of the needs of the transport industry. The duty has been reduced by $2 per liter. Every year we said that we should have it restored to the original level, but in fact the concession is still going on, and this is because we have taken care of the special needs. Now, if you ask for the duty to be further reduced, I think we need to face another problem. Well, we need to rely on economic means to control the number of vehicles as well as the traffic flow to make sure that the traffic will flow smoothly. If we don't have this tool, then there will be big problems. In Asia, many major cities have serious problems of traffic congestion during the peak hours that would affect our economic development. Therefore, the government must try its best to deal with the problem, and then the FS, as much as possible, will try to retain the concession, and the concession should not be abruptly suspended. But then if you ask for the duty to be totally waived, I don't think it will do us any good in the long term. I hope Ms. Lau can understand this point. Year after year, you have been fighting for their case, and then for the duty on ULSD, we have been maintaining it at a concession of $2 off the original amount until there are changes. I don't think we should go overboard. If we go overboard, we would affect others.
Mrs. Lau, I don't think it's overboard to fight for the interests of transportation sector. Industrial diesel is duty-free. Franchise buses and ferry companies also enjoy duty-free diesel. Aviation could charge a surcharge, but for public buses, the non-franchised ones, the minibuses and vehicles, they have to show the diesel duty. They are the only one who have to pay diesel duty. For other transportation sectors, they do not have to pay diesel duty. Now, the operating environment is so difficult for them. Why is the government still trying to levy duty on them to the full amount too? No, not to the full amount. We have already reduced it by $2. I don't know if there's any problem of communications between us. We have reduced duty by $2. And also, everywhere in the world, diesel is charged duty. Why must Hong Kong be unique? Well, we have to do our duty. As members of this council, you have the duty to perform. As the government, we have our duty to perform. We have to promote long-term economic development. And for drivers who use diesels, we have certain commitment to them. But I think we have struck the right balance. We have this duty rate for ultra-low sulfur duty. I think we've already struck the right balance, and we're still keeping the concession for many years, and I think that's just about the right balance. Ms. Li Fengying. In Lake Yuen Estate, Sha Tin, Chief Executive, there is a restaurant that's been around for decades called Lan Hang Kok. Maybe you have heard about it. Maybe you were the district officer in Sha Tin, you might have patronized this cafe. Now, this cafe has seen no change for decades, but recently it went over. It had a major refurbishment, and it's like any cafes now. In the past, the waitresses were middle-aged women, but now all the waitresses are young people. They've taken the place of the middle-aged women. So, Chief Executive, what can you do to help the unemployed middle-aged women so that they could find work again? Well, individual cafes and restaurants may have their own recruitment policies for them to decide, but the employment service division of the Labour Department already got a lot of retraining programs, and they could do referrals, and if there is need for retraining, we try to help retrain people skills that are in demand. So we're doing a lot of work here, like part-time domestic helpers. There are plenty. There is a strong demand. You know very well what programs we have. Well, thank you for the information. Perhaps I could ask the Labour Department to get in touch with the old employees there. It's the case that all of them are now unemployed. If that's the case, I would help. We could offer some assistance. No, I just used that as an example. It's not a complaint about a particular case. What is important is, well, you mentioned all the training and so on, but it really cannot address the employment difficulties faced by low-skilled workers. Earlier in the motion, when I moved the motion debate, I asked the administration to help improve the employment market for low-skilled workers. In my motion, I asked the administration to reverse its outsourcing policy based on cost saving into a policy that helps to create jobs for the low-skilled workers. But on that day, the Revenue Policy Secretary evaded the question. So I would like to ask the Chief Executive whether you're going to reverse the outsourcing policy. Otherwise, what's to happen with these? What are the prospects for these low-skilled workers? Now, for non-skilled workers, I think the employment situation is improving. Even in terms of wage level, there are also signs of improvement. So I'm sure as our economy continues to improve, the situation will improve further. On government policy to outsource services, we can see that this policy is welcomed by the public because we are spending less public money, but service level remains the same. Of course, sometimes we need to strike a balance. And as far as I understand it, we do take measures to create posts. We still have 11,000 posts that we're keeping. Well, these posts actually could have been replaced by automation and other means, but we haven't done it. So we have to consider each case one by one. Like the Sha Tin Cafe employees, we have to do something to help them. I think that would be more pragmatic instead of when we say we try to create a market, we just can't follow the old practices. You know, that may not be the best way, but the best way would be really to provide training. The retraining board could do some work, and then through training, workers are able to upgrade their skills, and then they're able to find work. That would be the more pragmatic approach. Instead of finding jobs that suit them, if they low-skilled workers, continue to find low-skilled work for them, and if there is low-paid job, we continue to find low-paid jobs for them. No, that's not right. We should help them upgrade their skills so that they could also improve their income. Mr. Fredley, Chief Executive, I also watched the match. So don't mind if I'm not too expressive. We've heard a lot of questions about livelihood. Now a question on politics. On the past July 1st, it was a hot day, but tens of thousands of people joined the march. And then your two former colleagues, Mrs. Chen, Mr. Yip. Now, Mrs. Yip saying that we're ready for universal suffrage in 2012, and Mrs. Chen has said we should have universal suffrage even sooner. Have you found the right page? Chief Executive, I'll give you some time, so I'll take longer to put my question. No need, but I'm afraid he might not find the page. I'm sure he can answer the question. If not, it's his problem, not yours. Anyway, because Chief Executive, there aren't many opportunities for you to make this clear in an open forum. Now, two former colleagues have expressed their views or their aspirations for universal suffrage, and tens of thousands of people have expressed their strong aspirations for universal suffrage on a sweltering hot day. So how are you going to respond to the aspirations of the people and your former colleagues? This is a broad issue. Perhaps I'll have to take up some time to give an answer. Now, I will not comment on individual retired or resigned colleague in their participation in activities. They have freedom just like any member of the public has. Of course, we may have different views on different issues, but I think it's individual choice, so I'm not going to comment on that. And we do not have the rule that retired or resigned civil servants cannot take part in this sort of activity. It's not just Mrs. Chen or Yip. Before we had Aka Jones, who also commented a lot on political issues. So it's nothing unusual. Now, about the July 1st march, people joining the march and the yearning for universal suffrage, I fully appreciate that yearning. And I share the same conviction. I am also just working as hard as the public. I hear the voices of the public. I also have the duty to convey these voices to the central people's government. In 2004, when I headed the Constitutional Reform Task Force, when we published the second report, I already made it very clear that from survey findings, we know more than half of the people of Hong Kong would like to see universal suffrage as soon as possible. So from the very beginning, the SAR government has never evaded the issue. We've actually faced up to this particular issue. We all agree that universal suffrage is an important value that we're all striving for. But at the same time, universal suffrage is about the design of a political system. I watched from TV, I read from newspapers, protesters have put up slogans like the universal suffrage issue has not been resolved. Well, I think that's the right slogan. Because how do we build consensus among different sectors in the community to build our universal suffrage system? How could we design the transition towards universal suffrage? These are all questions without answers yet. And how do we find answers to these questions? According to basic law, after 2007 and 2008, if there is need to amend the election methods for the Chief Executive and the Legislative Council, we need two-thirds majority with our three conditions met. That is, we need two-thirds majority support in this council, we need the Chief Executive Council, we also need the MPC's approval. I'm sure you all know this well. So we need to meet these three criteria. We also need to have first devise a system for universal suffrage, and we need a roadmap. This is not an easy task. We want to succeed, we have to do it in a rational manner. We have to be pragmatic. And I tried to be pragmatic, so last year I arranged for the entire council to visit Pearl River Delta. It was a knock on the door of communication. I thought to show our sincerity, we could then sit down together and discuss major issues that affect our long-term development so that we could have better mutual understanding, we could build mutual trust, and then we could all move towards building a good foundation for consensus. And so because we are pragmatic, we put forward a constitution reform package. It may not be a perfect package, but given the circumstances in Hong Kong then, I thought that was the package that would have the best chance of us striving for a consensus. At the time, I thought, I was actually convinced that if we were able to put in place that constitutional reform package, and we moved in that direction, we moved along that roadmap, this will be a big step forward towards universal suffrage. And that means universal suffrage would be within reach, and that will help us to have early universal suffrage. The central government also said at the time, on the people's aspirations for universal suffrage, on progressive development democracy, both public opinions have to be respected. But unfortunately, although we have the majority support of the public and we have more than 50% support of this council, we were not able to get two-thirds support of this council, so we have missed out on the opportunity for us to move a step ahead on the road towards democracy. Still, we cannot evade the question of universal suffrage, so that's why then I made a undertaking. In early 2007, we will do a summary of the possible means of election for the for elections. Now, from now to early 2007, we still have 6 months. We still have 6 months to find solutions to respond to that particular slogan. Now, I'd like to make an appeal to different parties, to different members, to come up with concrete universal suffrage packages. Packages that you think could meet the ideal, and a package that could have a good chance of arriving consensus among the three parties. We need to have positive interaction by putting forward a concrete proposal. Without a concrete proposal, how could we strive to narrow differences and arrive at a consensus? So I would appeal to all parties or individuals and all different organizations and members of the council to come up with a detailed proposal that would take us towards universal suffrage. The SL government will also support this proposal by arranging discussion at the Commission on Strategic Development. Now, many slogans have been put forward over the years. Slogans, of course, could and be encouraging to people, but we can't just rely on slogans alone, as you know, being the government and being politicians. We have to come up with concrete solutions. We have to act responsibly and pragmatically. Only then will we be able to realize our democratic ideals. I think it's time for us to set aside our differences. We should go beyond slogans. We should adopt a pragmatic and rational attitude in discussing the details of a universal suffrage package. We should strive for consensus and set aside differences so that we could eventually realize universal suffrage. True democracy is based on broad consensus of the community. And when we have this consensus, one day that's common victory for all of us, and this is the victory of pragmatism.
Mr. Fred Lee. Mr. Chang. Yes, I agree that universal suffrage is not something we can dodge. And then you have said that you have about 6 months' time before March next year. But I think you have more time than that. You said that there were many slogans over the past 20 years. Yes, but then there's only one focus. That is, we would like to have universal suffrage for the 2 elections. I think we haven't wavered from this for so many years. Now, for the year 2012, can we adopt the common goal, that is to have universal suffrage for the 2 elections? The DP did make a proposal to Mr. Stephen Lam. So can we adopt 2012 as our common goal? Well, I've said that we shouldn't just talk about slogans. We can't just blindly talk about a date. What we have to do is to propose something practical, pragmatic, and then we can have a roadmap. I thank the DP for making known their proposals. We'll be glad to take up the matter within the Commission for Strategic Development. I'm afraid in your framework there are many controversies. If we want to have consensus, we should allow different views to be aired, not just the Democratic Party, but also other views. Now, on this matter, that is universal suffrage for both elections. Yes, this has been put forward, but how? The question of how hasn't actually been addressed. How are we going to conduct the universal suffrage? I think if we want a rational discussion, I strongly believe that if we have rational discussion, we can reach our target. Dr. Philip Wong. Madam President, I would like to follow up on Mr. Fred Lee's question. The day following the July 1st rally, we read in the papers about the estimated turnout. There's always a big difference between the official estimate as well as the estimate of the organizers. See, why are you thinking that the government's estimate is more accurate? Well, the police is the enforcement agency, and the police has to plan for the crowd for the purpose of crowd control. Therefore, every year it will make announcements about the figures. We believe that it is reliable. And then every time after the rally, independent organizations like the universities as well as the actuarial bodies would also name some figures as to which should be adopted. I'm sure the citizens of Hong Kong have discerning eyes and they would tell which figure is correct. Of course, organizers are very keen and they hope that there will be more participants and they may also report. I think this is also common in other places, so doubling it or tripling the actual figure is not unusual. Mr. Leung Kwok-hung. Thank you, Madam President. Well, I have to hold this placard. This is because I want to tell the CE a very simple truth, a simple fact. Probably he can't read the words, so I'll read it out. Bamboo, Donald Zhang, no guts, no heart, no spine. Small circle election for CE, jeopardizing livelihood and depriving human rights. Well, I think you haven't done justice to the people of Hong Kong. You have no heart and you have no guts, you have no spine. You have said it yourself that in the second report of the Task Force on Political Reform, more than 50% of the people of Hong Kong would like to have universal suffrage. You have also said that we don't need to worry. You have said that you are a Hong Konger, you drink the water of Hong Kong, in your body you flow the blood of Hong Kong. Ask your question. Yes. I have a personal appeal to Mr. Chung. Last year, you relied on an executive order to replace legislative work by this legislative council. You said that you were justified, and yet we know that the administration has lost the court case. So on that occasion, you were wrong. You should apologize to us. So I'm just trying to give you a piece of advice. That's not the question. Then ask your question. Now my question is, now, Mr. Fred Lee did not name Mrs. Anson Chen, and he did not name Mrs. Regina Yip. Well, I think you owe the people of Hong Kong an account. After Mr. Sech Tung has stepped down, I want to know whether you have met Mrs. Anson Chen. On how many occasions? And did you ever talk about universal suffrage? And did she tell you that in fact it should be 2012 that we should have universal suffrage? Did you report this matter to the Central People's Government? This question from me is most meaningful because a magazine has said that in fact the two of you had dinner and you had a discussion. So you really have to tell the people of Hong Kong. You shouldn't put up a show. If you tell the Central that Mrs. Chen is coming out to run for the election, or if you tell Mrs. Chen that 2012 is hopeless, then please tell us. The question is, as the CE, you should take this opportunity and stand on this platform and tell me what you have told the Central or what you have told the to Mrs. Chen. If this is not involving state secrets, I really hope that today you can briefly tell us on how many occasions did you meet Mrs. Chen? Did you talk about 2012? Did you tell the Central People's Government? And if there is a response, what it is? And then your Chinese is indeed too wrong, too poor. You talked about friends or foes. I think probably Professor Lau or Lau Sai Leung should correct you. It is not a matter of friends or foe. It should be a matter of being friends with your allies, but you would persecute the dissenting voices. Probably Mr. Leung, like me, watched the World Cup finals last night, but it doesn't matter. Well, friends or foes, let me talk about it. It wasn't from me, it's from the papers. I think it was you yourself who adopted this term.
You said it, not me. Well, it doesn't matter. You could just go back on the records. I think someone else said it, definitely not me. Well, since you're talking about, friends and foes, and we're talking about going by public opinions. Those who go with the public opinions, we should listen to them. Those who go against public opinions, we shouldn't. Well, Mrs. Anson Chen and I have been friends and colleagues for over 30 years. Of course, we meet each other, and it's not something secretive. We regularly have dinners together. But whenever we meet, like with other colleagues, these are social functions, and I always make sure I don't talk about certain issues like political issues, religious issues, because we have to respect individuals' views. I'm not the only one who do that. Many people do that. Also, when it's a private gathering, what has that got to do with the Central People's Government? Why must I report it to Central People's Government? Well, it doesn't matter, maybe because you watched the soccer match. Mr. Leung, Kwok-hung, any follow-up, please? My question is straightforward. How many times did you meet? Did you ever talk about the 2012 universal suffrage? And did you report it to the central government? Well, you could say no, or you could say yes. How many times did you meet? Did you ever talk about this? Did you ever report it to the central authorities afterwards? It's a straightforward question. It has nothing to do with whether it's air conditioning, whatever. That is the question that is of the greatest concern to the people of Hong Kong. It's either yes or no. Because people will write memoirs. It will eventually history will tell. So whether it's a yes or no, there's a definite answer. Madam President, did I not say just now we often meet? I also said that this is not going to be reported to the central authorities. I also said I would not talk about political issues or religious issues. I thought I have answered all three of Mr. Leung's questions. It's 1 minute to 4:30. I think under the circumstance, I will not invite another member to put questions. Altogether, 14 members have put questions to the Chief Executive. Many are still on the list. I think you have to wait to the next legislative session, and you have to press the button sooner and earlier. I am grateful to the Chief Executive for answering questions. Chief Executive, and now leave the chamber. Will members please stand? Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, members. I now adjourn the Council until 11 a.m. on Wednesday, 12th of July, 2006.